Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adrienne Chadwick, and I'm the Deputy Director of Education here at Pérez Art Museum. Thank you all for joining us today for this great talk and discussion with Harry Allen, the designer. Before I introduce Harry, I'd like to thank our PAMM team for organizing this event. Michael Balbone from the retail shop, Anita Braham from education, and our AV team for being here. World-renowned designer Harry Allen is best known for his uniquely playful cast of domestic objects and larger design practice, including bank in the form of a pig, which you'll learn about today. This bank in the form of a pig is available in the PAMM gift shop, and a percentage of all of the aquamarine blue bank in the form of a pig will be donated to Pérez Art Museum's education department. So thank you for this thoughtful gift to our programming. Today's talk will be followed by a discussion with Diana Nawi, PAMM's Associate Curator, and that discussion will be followed by a Q&A. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Born in New Jersey in 1964, Harry Allen received his master's degree in industrial design from Pratt Institute. In 1993, he established Harry Allen Designs, and since then, he has designed furniture, lighting, products, and interiors for a wide variety of international clients. Harry's work is in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art and the Brooklyn, Denver, and Philadelphia Museums of Art. His awards include the Brooklyn Museum's Art Modernism Young Designer Award and 2 Industrial Design Society of America IDEA Awards. Harry's interest in art and innovation has led him to some of the most intelligent products and interiors in the world today. So I'd like to welcome Harry Allen. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here talking at PAMM. It's been a great couple days yesterday. They had me attend the corporate luncheon, which is a big fundraiser, which was a really beautiful event. And we've had a long-standing relationship. I have a line of products that I make. I'll show quite a bit of it today that are cast from real life. You can see a lot of it down in the store here, and we've had just a great relationship with the PAMM design store for quite a few years now. I mean, I couldn't believe it. A couple years ago, I just walked into the museum and there were a wall of my pigs in every color, which you just never see, and they've done very well with them over the years, selling them. So we thought that this year would be a great time to do a limited edition color. Every year we do new colors of the products, and the pig is sort of the cornerstone of the product line. So we thought we'd do a limited edition color just for the museum, donate some of the proceeds to the museum. And so that relationship is what brings me here today. So it's great for me to be talking in this beautiful art museum, beautifully designed museum, and it's an honor for me. So we've been talking about what I should talk about, and ultimately I talk best about my own work. So I'm just going to show my work and go way back and show you how I came about at the bank in the form of a pig, and my work in general. So we go back. This actually is work from college, but it led to a line of furniture that I made for a few years. I was very idealistic young man in college, and was, the world was filled with Philippe Starck at that point, and everything was shaped like a horn, or, it was just a very fluid design moment. And I am a bit of a gearhead, and I like things to make sense, and I sort of went back, and I wasn't really that knowledgeable at that point about all of the history of systems and the EAMS and all of that. I knew a little bit about it, but I just had this idea that I wanted to make a system that was very universal. So, and actually the table on the left up there was part of my thesis in college, and I wanted to work with another creative individual. I have a little bit of a desire in general to collaborate, and I thought, oh, it'd be interesting to work with another creative individual. And so I got on the phone and called a few chefs, and it led me, it was so funny, because first I called this guy, he was on the radio, his name was The Frugal Gourmet, and he was like, no, I can't help you. He was out in San Francisco. So he said, but I'll give you the number of my good friend Jacques Pepin. So he gave me his phone number. So I called Jacques Pepin, and Jacques Pepin, actually his wife answered the phone, and she's like, Jacques, there's a student on the phone. He's working on some project. So he got on the phone, and he's like, no, I can't work with you. But there's this young guy who just arrived from Paris, and he just opened a restaurant. Maybe he'd be interested. His name is Daniel Boulud. So I called Daniel Boulud, and he goes, yeah, come on up. So I would go up there like every day at 4, or once a week or a couple times a month, or whatever the schedule was. We'd meet about it, and what we were going to do was choreograph this meal that would involve this table, and all the pieces would change. That meal never happened, but I got a lot of good meals out of it. He would pack me like a to-go bag when I left, and I'd go back to my roommate. I'd be like, oh, look what I have, like foie gras. And it was a little insane, but the process was really fun, and the whole idea was that as we did this meal, the table would change. Like you could actually take pieces out of the table, and then that became my thesis, and then I thought, well, I should take that and sort of double down on it. And I had heard a bit about the furniture fair, which was just starting in New York, the ICFF, and I thought, well, I'll take that idea, that sort of utopian idea of this systematic furniture. I called it Living Systems. I made a logo and everything. I took it, and I built the unit on the right up there is part of that systematic program. It's all the same module as the table, and you can take a box from the table and put it in the dresser and back and forth. And I had this idea that it was going to take over the world, and everyone was going to have living systems in their house. And it lasted a couple of years. I sold quite a bit of it. But then I just got bored making the same thing over and over again, and so I moved on to other things. But it was a great way for me to establish, my aesthetic, to show it to the world. And in the process, I met a lot of great people. The next year, I did another, I added some lighting to that line, and these lamps are made out of ceramic foam. I was very interested in new materials, and I had a friend, actually his family business was ceramics, and I saw this foamed ceramic material, and I thought it would be interesting as a light diffuser, and I made these lamps out of it. And then Paola Antonelli from the Museum of Modern Art saw them. She brought them into a show called Mutant Materials and Contemporary Design, which was a show that's very hard to say, that was in 1994 at MoMA, which was great. Then they were acquired for the permanent collection after that. So this was like my second year in business. So I had a couple of things that happened right away that really got my career off the ground. I was sort of like the systems guy, and then there was this whole new material bent, and I was having a lot of fun. Something's going on. So in any event, this is a little backtracking, but I was doing all these systems. They all got into the windows of Barney's. They asked me to use them as display in the windows, and a guy named Murray Moss saw them, and he, through a series of events, asked me to design his store in New York, which ended up becoming a very famous design store. But you can sort of see, like if you look at the fixturing in the store, it was a gallery, so the floor was already wood, the walls were already white, and he asked me, will you build sort of a system for my store? And so I built all of the cases that go against the walls there. And then this front platform where he displayed product was really a version of that table where all the pieces change. You can see it has a grid on the top of it. And then later on, as we changed the store out, we added more of that system in the center. And I don't show a lot of interiors in this. I'm really doing product design at this point in my career, but I have done a lot of interiors over the years. This was the first one, a lot of commercial interiors. This was the start of it. And basically Murray came to me and he said, I want to be able to show product. he had come from the fashion world, very, very savvy retailer, and he had, I apologize, I'm just looking at the timing. I don't know how long I've been speaking. Will you tell me when it's like 1:30? Okay, because this time is off. But anyway, so Murray decided that he wanted to show product much like you would in a magazine. So like he wanted to be able to tell one story or add on to it, like pages in a magazine, and then you could add on to it. So I designed this system for him where he could show, just one story of product, or he could show a long story of product. And I just multiplied it out through the space. 5 years later, he decided that he wanted to show larger objects, so we sort of went from what was a gallery space, small, intimate objects, to much larger things in this space. We added museum rails around everything, so it made the product seem very, very valuable, and the stories that he was telling also contributed to it. Hugely successful design store in New York. And for many years, it was really what people knew me for, was the design of this store. It was great. I wrote on the coattails. I learned a lot about design from him. He had gone to Europe and really seen all of this amazing European product design and said, why isn't it being sold here in the United States? Brought it back, sold it in this great context, beautiful store, really beautifully arranged. And so by this time, the store had really caught on. We expanded it in a huge way in 1999. And you can see that it got, much more dramatic in display and much larger spaces. So it went from these sort of intimate vitrines to this very large, almost like museum-like setting. And then, so that was going on in my interior design work. And then this is what I followed up the living systems with. I basically took all the living systems, I packed it up, brought it out to my mother's barn, put it in the barn because I was just ready to move on. I wanted to do something else. And I started working with all these new materials, gluing them together, plastics and plywoods. This is a set of turned bowls. This work ended up in a bunch of different collections. These are in the Denver Museum of Art. And actually, like today, you could laser cut these bowls very easily, but at the time, laser cutting didn't even exist. So these were glued together and turned on a lathe, if you can believe it. And it was just like this big waste of material. But I thought the combination was interesting enough to merit the waste. And then at the same time, I was doing furniture that was a similar, these are many images of one line of furniture that I call my clamp tables, and basically they're made out of all these different sheet materials, plastics and plywoods, that are all just clamped together. So you cut out the profile, and then the base of the table clamps all the materials together and holds them together as a solid object. And these are in the Brooklyn Museum of Art. But and I didn't, I would sell like one or two of these. I would end up with a bunch of them. I probably still have parts in my storage unit out in rural New York. But what was great about all of that play with material and systems is that it worked itself out into the much more commercial part of my business, and that was like packaging is a huge area of design in New York City. I had come from, my first job out of school was actually at Estee Lauder, which is a big cosmetics company. And this is a project that I did for Aveda, where they came to me and they said, we want to do something amazing that's really environmental. I went to a place called Material Connection and found this. It's an injection molded material, but it has a huge content, like 30% of it is recycled, like a wood pulp. And we used it on this lipstick case. It was a great success for them, won a lot of awards. But I thought, oh wow, my material, all that experimentation with all these sort of new materials in my studio was able to come through and become part of this larger project. And when you work at this is the fun thing about industrial design, is like it runs this huge spectrum, right? Like some of it's just I'm making one-off things in my studio and learning, but then if you can actually take that learning and apply it to these mass-produced pieces like this, you actually are saving some plastic in the world. Like you're actually doing something good for the world. Also, this lipstick that you see the little plug of color next to it, that piece was disposable, so you kept the case, and then after you were done with using the lipstick, you could throw away just the centerpiece and keep the case. So there was a savings of material there also. And then this is back to sort of product design stuff, but this is a project that I did for IKEA. It's a long story how I did that, but this was the first really big mass project that I did, and it's a little lamp. It just spins on 3 wheels. It was red, like when you walked into IKEA, it was the only red thing in the entire lighting department, which was just by chance, but it sold really, really well for many years. It was in the American IKEA stores for maybe 6 years, which is like a really long time in IKEA. So it was a great success for them, and it was cool for me because it was like, you know, you just sell so many things in an IKEA, and all of a sudden it was showing up in movies, and it's in Spider-Man, you know, it's on his desk as a kid. But anyway, so it was a fairly successful product. And then that brings us to this line. So you can sort of see that this cast product is very different than the rest of my work, and I've spent a lot of time trying to justify that in my work, not in a bad way. It's just I feel like it's just different than the rest of it. It's not, I wasn't life casting my whole career, but I had this idea that it all came to me at once. I met a guy who out in Long Island City, in New York City, did life casting for museums. He would like literally take a sculpture from the museum, replicate it, and they would sell it in the museum store. So that was what he did. And the way you do that is it's cast, it's resin, but it's cast in silicone molds. So the molds are very flexible. So you don't have to worry about undercuts, and you can get a lot of real detail. So I met this guy, and then I thought, I had these candlesticks. I don't show them here, but that were given to me by my grandmother, and I really loved them. They're beautiful, silver, really ornate candlesticks, and I sort of thought that it was weird that I loved them so much because I'm like such a modern person, and they were these ornate candlesticks, and then I thought it'd be interesting to like try to bring those into contemporary life. So I thought it would be fun to cast them in plastic. So that was actually the first project that I did, and then soon after that I had this idea to do a piggy bank, but I had to find the source material, and I'm a meat eater, so I was ready, I was prepared to have the pig killed and stuffed and cast. And I found a taxidermist up in New York State that was also prepared to do that for me. And turns out, though, that I did not have to kill the pig. Its mother had suffocated it, and then I had it stuffed and cast. But so it's like not quite as bad, but just as gruesome. But I only had to do it once, and then we've multiplied it many, many times all over the place. And it's really the cornerstone of this line that's all cast from real life. And as I was thinking about it, it did take me a little while to go like, why am I doing this? It's so different from everything else that I've done. But it's a very similar appreciation of the world. Like if you're a designer and you're looking at the way things are made and you fall in love with materials, like I didn't want to paint that material that I made the lipstick case out of. I liked it for its like the real factor. Like I liked it, all of the chips in it and all of the variation in the material. And this is a similar thing, like I'm looking at the world and I'm just like grabbing something right from the world. It was also right at the time that reality television was coming along, a lot of sampling in music, and so I sort of thought design wasn't really doing that. It wasn't responding in a similar way, and that it would be interesting to just go to the world and just sort of grab some things out of the world. And then, of course, you change the color, you do a material transformation, and then it's a very new sort of sculptural object. So this pig has had an amazing life. Goes all over the world. I don't even know where it goes. It's after I started making them, they were picked up for production by a great little company, New York-based company called AreaWare. All of the production was moved to China, so the prices came down dramatically from when I was doing it. And then we've issued them in many different colors, many different finishes, and it's really had a great life. At the same time that I was doing the candlesticks and the pigs. There are many of these. This is a wall hook that I did that's based off of my own hand, you can see. And actually, I did a bunch of them. I did a whole bunch of different postures, and some of them actually hold things, like one holds incense. And these are, people respond so well to these, which I think is so interesting. And I'll walk in, and then there will be my hand on someone's bed table, but which is good. It's great. It means they bought it. But so this was right at that same period when I was doing the candlesticks and the pig. Those were my first three products. But then after AreaWare picked it up, I was asked to do more of it. And at that point, we started, like the upper left, I thought it'd be interesting to try something that was sort of motif-driven. So I started working with rope. I made all these rope bowls. We cast those in resin. Everyone's been after me to do more animals. Animals sell, so it was like there was a big push to do animals. I found that cute little box turtle that's a box when you take the top off of it. I have a thing for trucks. I took an old Tonka truck, I cast that. That became a place just to keep things on your desk, very butch, manly product. And then you can see on the lower right, the pig has been done in, just many, many different colors over the years. Those are all chrome colors. We did 1 year, all of those in 1 year. It was a bit of a crazy launch. So the product line has had a great life, and thanks to the store here at PAMM, we've sold quite a bit of it in Miami also. But, and so this is, I've also tried to push that product line in a few different directions. These are some paper lamps that I did. I made them the same silicone molds that I was making the other pieces in. I thought, oh, it'd be fun to do something other than resin. Resin's not the greatest environmental story. It's not horrible because you keep these products for a long time, but it still has some off-gassing and stuff. I thought, oh, it'd be fun to just do something with paper and glue. So I took those molds and I started working with rice paper and glue, and I came up with this formula. I could just make a shell on the inside of the mold and then put them together. So I did this lantern. Then there was a lamp that I did also out of that. There's a whole period where I was really trying to do a lamp that would go into the line. So this was one attempt at it, and it ended up being put into production by a company in the Philippines called Hive. And then this was another project that where I was attempting to do a light. It's like a very literal thing, like piggy bank, pickup truck. I'm always looking for things that are, like there's sort of a word play, ironic nature. And I thought, oh, firefly, that's a good thing. They light up, could be a nice lamp. So what I did was I caught a firefly in my backyard. This project actually took 2 years because the first year the firefly got destroyed, and then I had to wait a whole nother year for the fireflies to come back. So I caught a firefly, I dried it out, and I brought it to this place that does X-ray scanning. They do scans of like tumors and things like that. So they use it for the medical industry because they can look right through things, or it scans right through things. So that I had them, and it was the only machine I could find that would have enough detail at a small level. So I brought it out to Pennsylvania. They scanned it. And then I blew it up on the computer, so it's about 6 inches high, and then we printed it out. I haven't yet to find a way to cast it or commercially produce it, so we've just been 3D printing them. And then it has a little light in it. Is someone hissing at me? No. Oh, is that the 1:30 mark? Well, I'll go a little bit longer. I mean, there's quite a lot more stuff to show, but these are ways that I've tried to push that reality line. None of these have been commercialized, but this gets lit up with a little LED light, and I had a whole show of them at one point where I had a whole room filled with fireflies. And then this is the logical extension of that into my more commercial work. Like I said, I usually try to take these studio projects and bring them somewhere. This was a fragrance bottle that I designed for Marc Jacobs called Bang, and I literally took a piece of metal and a hammer, went bang, got this beautiful impression. It was a rectangular hammer, and then we used that material, scanned that into the computer, and used that as the form of the bottle. And wasn't a huge success here in the United States, but you can still buy it in Europe. course, like all fragrance. And then, I might skip through this. This is a project that I did for Corian, and I'll just go through it lightly. But they basically, DuPont Corian, which is a solid surfacing material, they asked me to just sort of play around with their material and develop a showroom for them in Philadelphia. And this is the result of that. And the reason that I included it in this is because it was very sort of object-oriented. I did, the lighting was made out of Corian, that whole lighting grid. You can print on it. On the left, you can see a result of printing on it. The desk at the front of the space where they had all the material samples, I built it out of the material samples, so that's that desk there. This is, they needed some conference space, so I built this very long table. One end of it sat 6 people, the other was just a place for a couple people to sit, and it like stretched through this hole in a glass wall. And actually the coolest thing in the whole space is actually those window screens on the far side there. They gave me the access to all of their technology, and they have very cool stuff. People are doing really cool things with the material, and it's translucent. So there's this guy who actually has this computer program that will convert a black and white drawing or photograph into, it runs it through a CNC router. So the router removes Corian from where the image is lighter, so that when you hold it up to the light, the thinner areas are brighter, the thicker areas are darker. So I took a photo outside the window before the space was done, and then we broke it up on 5 panels so that when you closed the window screens, it was the image of what was outside the window, except it didn't move in perspective. It was very weird, but it was actually a really great effect in the space. And then it would darken the space, and they could show videos and things. But it's the image of what's outside the window. I think I'll skip over this for the moment. Just keep moving. Okay, that's fine. But can I go for another? I mean, is that all right? I'll go through the whole thing. Oh, actually, this. So I hadn't really worked with systems in many years. Systems are very hard to sell. You need an intermediary. Like very rarely will someone go in and buy like a system for their living room, and that's what I learned that first time around when I was making my systems. Is it's a hard sell. It's like a great idea, but the reality of it is it's hard in the marketplace. But I had a guy ask me for a bench. I went in with this concept. Dune is the name of the company, great New York manufacturer, and so I just went. It's 4 separate pieces that can be combined sort of in any system, and those are soft upholstered tubes. So it's just a seating system, can go in any public space. And he was like I did design a bunch of things for him, or went in with concepts that were just sort of singular benches, but he was totally into the system, went for it. And it's been really fun because he's a good salesman. So like we just did a huge installation and ExxonMobil in their new headquarters down in Houston. We did a big installation at Bloomberg in London, and then all these like little installations in homes and stuff. So it's been fun. Nice to revisit the system sort of in a less complex way than I did. I'm going to skip a few things, but and then this is another little side project. These are sort of studio experiments. The left is made out of tin cans. I just used actual tin cans, soldered them together, and then they're all coated in a plastic material. And I was using these as like just to hold pens and things on the walls, just storage unit next to desks and things. And then usually with all these studio projects, I might sell a few pieces, but usually they go into charity auctions and things. But what I love about this whole idea of reuse is the same thing that I like about the reality things, is that in all of these objects, like the tin cans or the bottles on the right, those are just regular liquor bottles on the right, so it's like a little cocktail table, but it's made out of liquor bottles, and they're all sandblasted. Like I do a lot of work to actually reuse the bottles or the packaging that I'm using. But what's interesting is that everyone has a relationship to these things. Everyone has a relationship to a tin can. You sort of you go like, oh, tin can. It's the same thing. You go like, oh, pig. Same thing with a liquor bottle, like, oh, those are liquor bottles, although you sort of look at them in different ways. So I'm a really big fan of the ready-made, and this next one is a fun project that I did for Matter, which is another New York-based. He's a store, but he's started making things. Matter Made is his company, and we were actually in the process of re-shingling our house, and I was like, wow, those things they're so beautiful. It's such a beautiful texture, and the smell is so beautiful. And then he asked me for, a project, and I said, why don't we do like a cedar chest, but have it made out of cedar shake shingles? So it turns out that what you store things in is a different material. So the inside is actually lined with red cedar, and the outside is the cedar shake that we know and love. But I thought that it was sort of interesting to take that aesthetic, like that beautiful texture from the outside of the home, and bring it inside of the home. So this is meant to be a storage closet for coats and sweaters and things, because cedar is so good against moths. This is a little wooden chair. It's funny because yesterday I was talking with Diana, who we're going to talk in a minute, and I was saying, chairs, they're like the holy grail of the design world, so you want to design them. But then actually, when I get up in front of a group of people and I have to talk about a chair, there's just not a lot to say about it. But the most interesting thing that I did here was I broke up all of the legs and the back pieces. So it's got a very nice formal quality, and it's very comfortable to sit in. And what's interesting about it is because I removed the center of the chair, it removes that area of the chair that would be right up against your spine. So it's very comfortable. I do a lot of yoga, and it comes out of that practice, the ergonomic quality of this chair. It was done for a small company out in San Francisco called Council. And then this is another chair project. I've been doing a lot more furniture in recent years. And this is a stool that I did for Umbra Shift, which is a Canadian company. And I've been doing a lot of work with textiles recently. Textiles are great because you can change them very easily. Like a lot of industrial design is very set, and like you're working in materials that are unchangeable, but with textiles there's this ability to change them, and so I've been very attracted to them in recent years. But I just started, I worked with string. I was just building these little string models, and I came across this sort of, this is a tractor stool. There are many people who have done this stool over the years. Castiglione, a great Italian designer, did one where it's an actual tractor stool. And everyone probably has a relationship with a chair that has this form. I just made it out of that soft material. It's a cord wound around a wire structure, and then it just has the wooden legs. And it's done very, very well, this piece. And then I might actually just stop on this one because I feel like it's going a little bit long, and then we can talk a little bit. Is that all right? But this was fun. This was a couple years ago. I was asked, or I was invited to be part of a residency up at Haystack Mountain School of Craft, which is up in Maine, on the coast of Maine. It's very beautiful, and it's a 2-week residency, and they basically give you all their facilities to work in. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. I'm not a crafts person. I'm not a maker. I don't really, like everyone there's a pottery studio, so everyone who's a potter runs to the pottery studio, and everyone who's a woodworker, they run to the woodworking studio, and I don't have a craft, So I basically had like 5 stations. Everyone was laughing at me because I would just I'd go from like the wood studio, and then I'd go back to the fiber studio, and I was all over the place. But I had a lot of fun, and it was interesting to sort of get back in touch with that part of me, the making part, that you do when you were in art school or when you're in the school context. So the chair on the left, actually, I took. The one thing I brought a few things with me up there. I had projects that I had in my mind, and one of them was an Eames shell chair. I hope everyone's familiar with that, but it's just like the classic Charles Eames fiberglass shell. And I had one of those without any legs on it, and I used that as the form So I put it upside down, and I just started all the people in the wood shop, they were just laughing at me because they're all like whittling, they're like fine woodworkers. And I just like, I went to the hardware store, I bought all these dowels, and I came back and a big box of screws, and I had my screw gun, and I just went zzz, 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 and I screwed all of these dowels together over the Eames chair. And they were all like, and at one point I had them all, taped together, like I would tape them together before I screwed them in place. And the old guy behind me said, "Nice joinery, nice masking tape joinery." I was like, "Oh, great." But then I just kept screwing as many as I could together, and then I knew what I was doing. And then I flipped it upside down, and they all walked around and they go, "Oh, wow, we didn't know what," they thought I was going to keep the shell as part of it. But what's really cool about it is when you sit in it, it sits exactly like an Eames chair because it's built off of the same form, and all of the rods are just tangent to that form, so you're sitting on all these points, but it holds you very much like an Eames chair. And then on the right-hand side, I placed myself while I was up at the residency. I put myself in the fiber studio, and there was this bucket of clothespins that they used when they were dyeing the fabric. So they were all different colors, and I thought those were really beautiful. So I made this half sphere, and then I just started gluing them together over this half sphere. So that's this bowl that I made out of clothespins. So I was really dealing with my molds again, except starting to assemble things over top of them. And then I'm going to show you I'm going to flip through a few things, but you can get on my website and see these things. Oh, this is some glass I did last year that I work with these glass blowers out in Portland, really great couple called Esk. And we had a show of this glassware. I make all the metal pieces, and then they blow the glass in it. So I've been doing a lot of craft collaborations recently. This is one of them. This was the show that we had. No, it's not. It disappeared for some reason, but that's fine. I'm going to skip through this. This is called the Design Pavilion. I'm the creative director of it. It happens in the spring in New York. It's amazing. It was really fun, but not enough time. But this is a recent product that will launch. It just launched with AreaWare, so it will be in the market soon, called the Candy Dish. And basically what I did was I built the negative piece, much like my chair and my bowl that I did at Haystack, and then I glued candy all on the inside of the form, then demolded that, so it's like a block like this with a bowl in the top of it, and that's meant to hold candy or whatever you want to put in it, and then we cast that in resin. But it's made up of all, Smarties and licorice and M&Ms and Toblerone and all these things. So this is one of the latest products in the AreaWare line, Reality line. And then we added this hand bowl, which is just brand new. And then we brought back this bowl that's made out of a rack of bananas, cast from a rack of bananas, which is something that I had in the line years ago. But the line has sort of lost its way in the last couple of years, so we're sort of gathering things back into it and sort of trying to hone it again. So that's sort of the broad Harry Allen design story. This is our...
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And huge thank you to you for sharing your practice with us. It's always such a pleasure to see works of art and design that you love and you see and you know nothing about, and then to learn all of this backstory and to connect so much. And I think I really loved seeing the scope and range of your practice. So thank you so much for such an insight into what you do and how you think about what you do. I have like a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So you guys get your questions ready. I've been thinking about mine. But one thing is you started with your thesis project, which is a certain origin. But I know we have a lot of students in the audience, and I know for myself, design is arguably, alongside architecture, the thing that most shapes our world, and yet it's a very opaque field. I don't think people are often aware that literally every single object is, somebody designed that. And so I wonder a little bit about how you even came into the field, or to think about making, and to think about sort of seeing your place within the kind of built universe that we inhabit.
Sure, it's interesting. I went to a really like sort of serious like prep high school up in New Jersey, but they had someone along the line had put in this amazing ceramics studio in the basement, and that was where I spent my entire high school years, was down making ceramics. But then when it came to college, my parents were sort of like, you're not going to become a potter. Let's just face it. We'll pay for this once. Why don't you get a nice liberal arts education? And I did. I went to Alfred University, which has a huge ceramics school, but I did political science undergraduate. But what was interesting about that experience at Pingree, which was the school I went to, was that no one there looked at me, saw what I was doing, the ceramics, and thought there was anything that I could do with that in terms of a career. So I had to really like find my way back to, after the political science degree, and then I moved back to New York and I was working, and then I worked my way back to it. So I had to find it too. Like in the United States, like in Europe, you just have a much more design-friendly culture from the government down. There's a lot of government organizations that sponsor design and show work, and like people are just much more aware of it as a profession. Here in the United States, it's the hidden creative field, and I had to find it too. And so I just, then you're in New York. New York, thankfully, has enough resource that you can sort of figure out what you want to do in your life. And then I found my way back to Pratt, and that was where I got my design degree.
One of the things that came up a lot, I think consistently, even from the beginning with that great story about creating the original living systems, is the notion of collaboration. It seems to have really shaped your practice and shaped the way you approach a lot of what you do. And I think we can really broadly interpret collaboration, like even when it's, a more traditional idea of a client and a designer working together, from a brief or something. But I also wonder, even IKEA, like even that, I know you said it was a long story, so I won't force you to divulge the details, but what it means to work with, such a storied and huge corporation, and to kind of tap into that legacy, and how you kind of thought about what you wanted to create for them, even up to some of the cast items and other things where you're really working with artisans to create things, and how you conceptualize collaboration within your practice kind of all the way through, from kind of origin through to fruition.
Yeah, it's funny, like in the design world, very rarely will you ever collaborate with another designer. Like someone would have to say, you guys have to collaborate together. But the great thing about design is that it incorporates so many other things. So like if I'm, and all those collaborations that you're talking about with clients and with other creative individuals are, they come about in very different ways, but I'm like totally fine with it. I think it just contributes to it. Like I love when a client says to me, make it like 3 inches by 3 inches and red. Like it's like it just eliminates so many things that you could possibly do. So it's like that just makes it easier. And then there's huge freedom in that space. I mean, just think of it, all the things you can do that are 3 inches by 3 inches in red. I mean, it's like it's still a multitude of things, so it just saves you some time. And then like all of the like even when I went to Daniel Boulud, like I went to someone who had a quality that I didn't have, or an expertise that I didn't have. The work with the glass blowers recently, that esque work that I just sort of skipped over pretty quickly, but they're amazing glass blowers. They bring something, that. So that's actually really fun for me to have that extra influence in there. And I'm not like a big prima donna either. Like it's not like my way or the highway. Like it's like when people bring stuff, you respond to it, and that's actually fun. Like I'm a very social person too, so I see that as very social. Like what about this? What about this? Especially between a couple of creative people, it can be really, really fun and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting for me is that there's certainly a model where an artist or designer conceptualizes something and somebody fabricates it, and that's a lot more to do with execution, and you might come in and say, more red, less red, 4 inches, not 3, or, it's this sort of much more of a kind of art director kind of role, and it's great. I think one of the things that also really struck me about your practice is this idea of responsiveness, and this idea, rather than kind of like light bulb idea to execution, is this sort of very, this way that you're not just responding to other people, but you're responding to a material or to a linguistic play or to an object or to a need, which I think was quite nice to see how that brought about such a diversity of objects. Was this response, I mean, even the work that you showed right before us, the clothespins, which in some ways is formally has a very different, much softer, kind of worn, certain aesthetic, where some of the things are quite refined and have this different kind of futuristic kind of finish. But I really loved that it's about the idea and about responding to those different kinds of triggers that you find. And I'm curious how that's affected your practice, to think about it. We talked a little bit about this, you don't totally have a signature, but how to think about that, and how that has been a handicap and been something that's really propelled you forward.
Yeah, it all comes out of the same process, and I'm not really that concerned about the aesthetic similarity of it all. Like, a lot of times designers, like the traditional industrial design toolbox was form, color, material, like the classic things, and those are the things that designers use. And I'm less, and so often, like, you look at a designer and they have a signature formal language and they apply it to everything across all, every project.
Right.
And I was never interested in that. I'm much more interested in concept, but the process is the same. Like, I get from the beginning to end in the same way. I always say, this is always fun for students, but I always say that, when you're making, and this is a little bit of an aside, but you made me think of it, that if you think of the life of a project, the idea, that's like the sex. It's really easy and it's really fun. But the hard part is giving labor and raising it and getting, really bringing it into the world is the hard part. And that's all of the, the manufacturing, and you run into all of these problems and you have to figure out your way around them, and but you have to keep your eye on that original concept, so that you don't lose it, it doesn't become a drug addict, you have to just make sure that you keep it on track, and that's the hard part. And it can be, I got an email last night that was a classic case of it, that I was just I don't know who I was with, but someone was like, are you gonna be, that was you, are you gonna be okay? It's looking at this and going how am I gonna get around this problem? It will. But it's but yeah, but I love that process, actually. All that contributes to it, and going back and revisiting that original idea, that's a really important thing, because the worst thing you can do is say, oh, we're gonna have a problem making this circular. Let's just make it square. Square will be easier. That will cost less, or whatever. And you go, no, it can't be. It has to be round. That was my original idea. You just keep having to revisit that original idea over and over and over again.
Right, and to problem solve your way kind of into it.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways. Yeah.
I didn't really answer your question. But.
No, but I think it gives more shape and form to what you're. I think the other thing that that really struck me was just looking again at the diversity of types of projects. I mean, you've said recently you've moved more towards furniture in the last few years, and that you're doing kind of individual products versus, for instance, interiors. But a little bit about what your studio practice looks like. And how that works, how big your team is, whether you're you mentioned you're in Portland because the glass blowers are there, and various other contexts, you're literally in different parts of the world to work with artisans, but also what that the differentiation between studio and business, and I mean, at this point in your career, are you handing drawings to someone, or how much oversight do you have, and sort of how you manage that?
Yeah, I'm a really small operation, and I have been for the last few years. I've been the studio's been as big as 6 people, 6 designers. More when I had the interiors. Interiors require a lot more people. Product design is pretty streamlined. You really I'm not good on the computer, but all I need is someone who is good on the computer. It's all done in SolidWorks programs. But right now I have one designer in the studio. I have a woman that helps me manage the studio, myself, and then if I need more help, I have a bunch of freelance help. So it's just really streamlined. And then, I've never really turned down a project. I've lost a lot of projects, or things have not come to fruition for whatever reason, but I've never, I'm very interested in doing the next thing. Mm-hmm. And everyone will be like, what do you, this common question is like, well, what would you like to design? And I can't think of anything that I wouldn't like to design, and the thing that I don't really want to design is like another piggy bank, although I've done that too. I didn't show it, but I have another piggy bank that I designed for someone. But I'm less interested in doing something that I've already done before. It's not like I wouldn't consider it. I just am less interested in it. There's always another good solution for something. I'd love to design a car. I've never designed a teapot, And what I will do, like I was saying, I've been doing a lot more furniture. I will literally say, okay, I haven't done enough lighting. I need to do more lighting. And then I'll just set my mind to that. I'll start doing lighting in the studio as my studio stuff, and then I'll reach out to everyone I know that's in that industry, and even people I don't know, and just see what comes out of that. And then, get a couple of those projects rolling, and then and some of them will happen and some of them won't happen, but you're, moving towards that. And then I'll go, I don't have a chair in production. I really want to do a chair, and then same thing again. I'll just sort of put that out into the world and just move towards it, and it tends to. So it's actually, my practice is very personal. Yeah. It's not. And there was a time when I really wanted my studio to be huge. 50 people working on all these things, and and I was never given that. That never just happened. The world never produced that 50-person studio for me. So, and actually, I think it's a good thing. I'm really happy. It's kept it very personal. It really is. I'm involved in everything, and I love it. It's my.
It's your literal hand.
It is.
Yeah.
So, and I really like it that way. I mean, you always want more work. You always want, the next fun thing to work on, keep more people employed. It's more is merrier, in the studio context. But I'm fine with it the way it is.
And it's important to you that you have complete oversight. I mean, it sounds like you have a very close control of what you're working on, and that it's close to you.
Yeah, I love designing. I love the process of designing. And what happens is when you get bigger and busier, you end up doing a lot of the business end of it. And I loved that Warhol quote yesterday, by the way, where what is it?
What is it? It was
something about art, business being, good business being art, or something like that, that business is part of it. I don't mind the business part of it, but it can really overwhelm you. And what I really want to be doing is the fun part of it. So it's you always have to keep your eye on that too, that you haven't, you look up one day and you're like, oh my God, what is this that I've,
beast that I've,
what have I wrought, no, I really want to be sort of sketching and communicating with my designers and making things happen.
And then I think my last question is just a forward-looking question, which is, partly one of the things that came up is this relationship to technology, because you mentioned, it was interesting to hear you say about those early works, now you could just do this, but at the time it was totally handmade, and kind of how technology has been shaping your practice consistently, and maybe just looking forward, we talked about a great project that maybe you could talk about that seems very shaped not by technology in a kind of traditional sense of new ways of making, but literally kind of new materials and new ideas around materials. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you're working on now and how that was kind of moving into the future.
One of the things I'm not so into is that the way the world looks is formed by new technology. I look at the Zaha Hadid building going up across the street. I've never really been into that so much, that the new world is that much different because technology allows it to be that way. I look at the way that building's being made, which is sort of funny because it's made like every other concrete poured building. Like it's this going to be this huge fluid building, but then so was Art Nouveau. You know what I mean? Like like I'm not so sure that technology is like, or that the world should look the way technology allows it to look. Like just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
Right.
But also technology is this amazing tool, and there are, like we've been digitally printing in the industrial design profession as a tool in order to see what you're, like, oh, I designed these glasses, let's just make a digital print of them. Now, like 3D printing is the future. Like everyone's going to be 3D printing the knobs to their stove or whatever. Like, I'm like, really? Do you want to do that? Like, go for it. I don't even want to be doing that. But so like but it's a great tool. Actually, I started this fun project that I do every Christmas now. I design a Christmas ornament and I give it to people as a digital file, which someone said, that's not a gift. And I'm like, yeah, that's a gift. Like I'm giving you intellectual property that you can print. Like if I gave you an album, you'd have to have the record player. Like I'm not going to give you the record player, I'm giving you the album. And so I give this as a digital file, and then people can print it out. A lot of people that I know have 3D printers, and then I have a service that can print it also. So I sort of think like it's cool. Like I love this new world of 3D printing and computer modeling. But I think it's really just a tool to do what you've always wanted to do. Like I'm not so sure whether it's affected me in a futuristic way.
Yeah. And can you talk about the mushrooms very briefly?
Yeah.
Because it was so fascinating.
I skipped over it. Actually, I'll move back just to the image of it. This was a cool project. When I did this design pavilion thing, I was the creative director of it, and it was in Astor Place, and we had a bunch of people did installations in the center of the space. And there were, IBM did an installation, DuPont Corian did an installation. It was pretty cool. It was open to the public. Everyone came. That huge circular thing was an art installation. You could step on it at night. All those discs lit up. It was pretty cool. It's very the whole thing was very interactive, and it's this whole new world of experiential marketing in that people come in, work with designers. I'm sorry, this is a long answer to your, but this is the build up to it. And they create these experiences where we want to educate people about design. We want people to get excited about design. And as we were saying, it's the unknown creative field in the United States. So you really open people's eyes. And so we had all these installations, and the company, I decided that I would design one installation. I wanted to get as many designers involved as possible, but I would do one of them. And one of the companies that we engaged to show is called Ecovative. So this is the booth that I designed for them. And Ecovative is this really cool new, it's a materials company, but it's also a manufacturing company. And they grow a material that's made out of mushrooms. And the mushrooms act as the binder. So they basically take mycelium, which is mushroom roots, and I think mushrooms, and wood chips, and they can put that material in a mold, and the mushrooms grow to fill the mold, and then you demold it, you dry it out. The mushrooms are no longer alive. They're just a material. And the amazing thing about mushrooms is they're fire retardant, and then they have all of these other qualities about them. So like when you look at, this is the booth that I designed for them, and they didn't have enough material to build the whole booth, but I was sort of not that interested in that. I was more interested in it as like the reality of the mushroom material. Like what do you have today that we can work with? So if you look at where that logo is, the Ecovative logo, that's a board they make where the mushroom material, which is grown in different densities, is then heat pressed into like a chipboard. So that's that material there. And then next to it, you see that the softer white material, those are actually acoustic tiles, but that they let the mushroom grow and those panels get fuzzy, almost like a camembert cheese, and then they dry it out. So it's like a fuzzy material. So it's sort of cool, like they're doing all this stuff with mushrooms. So one of the things we want to do at the Design Pavilion is sort of encourage innovation. Of course, they're this hugely innovative company. It's a really cool company. And I thought, well, they had this fledgling program. The mushrooms are also sound absorbent in their less dense state. They absorb sound, and that's a product category. Acoustic tiles. It's something, if you have a very bright sounding room, you can put acoustic tiles on the wall, it absorbs sound. So it's a kind of thing you use in offices or in restaurants, contract sort of design, but it's a product category. It's one that I've always wanted to design. So they had this fledgling program where they were working on it. I said, well, why don't you do that? So they worked with 3 or 4 designers, myself being one of them. So I designed the booth for them, and then I also designed this acoustic tile for them. So those are just individual pieces that are assembled to look like a woven wall. And since I'm so textile happy these days, I thought it was interesting to use the weaving as a motif. It also creates all of these pockets that absorb sound on the inside of it. And the cool thing about this is that the core is that mushroom material, which is completely compostable. So you can take anything that's made out of that material and throw it in the waste pile, and it will decompose. And I was like, and they're very, they're like very environmentally forward, this company. So it wasn't like I could say, oh yeah, let's just, combine that with some plastic. Like no, it needed to be. And so I was like, I had this charge. And so I went to a friend of mine. She runs Design Text, which is a fabric company, and I said, do you have anything that's like environmentally good? She said, well, it just so happens that I worked with this company in Switzerland, and we designed some fabric that's completely compostable. I said, oh, that's perfect. And then we had to figure out how to mount that fabric onto the mushroom board, and I found this glue. It's a heat-sensitive glue that's made out of soy, which is completely compostable. So not that you would ever want to throw them away, but if you had to, for some reason, throw those tiles away, you could put them in your composter, and they would turn into, compost. You could put them on your plants. So that's cool. Like, you encounter something like that, and the possibilities are just amazing. Like, it really...
Yeah, I thought that was too good. I learned about this yesterday, and I was too fascinated to not have him share this with you, because if mushrooms are the future of biodegradable materials.
Look the company up. It's a very cool company. They've done some amazing things. It's really great.
So now we'll open it up for questions from the audience. We'll take a few.
Hi, my name is Jimena.
Hi.
Okay, I have a question. Because you do so much like commercial work, like a lot of your work you sell, do you ever feel like you sacrifice a little bit of your own like creativity or design just to match like what they are looking to buy?
I mean, I think that's in that, yeah, maybe a little bit. But that's in that sort of collaborative thing. Like, it's a spectrum, right? Like, you could just only design exactly what you want to design and put it in a gallery, make them one by one, sell them for a lot of money. It's more towards the art world. You can decide to play on a really mass level where you're doing something that's going to go into IKEA. It has to appeal to a lot of people. They're going to have a lot of stuff to say about it. And I like both of those worlds. When I had the idea to do the pig, I was like, I'm sure I was like roller skating somewhere and said, that's a great idea, or whatever. And it was me alone. But my first jobs were in the cosmetics world, and those are big companies, and you're around a board table with 12 people, and everyone's weighing in on it. Everyone's a designer, everyone, you leave the meeting, you go, oh my God, how am I ever going to do this? But actually, if you can find that sweet spot in the middle of what everyone wants, that's another quality. It's like the other side of your brain. It's over here somewhere, it's a completely different side, and And that's really a challenge and really interesting too. And I happen to like both of those. Not everyone likes those. So, for me, it's not a problem, but I think if you're becoming a designer, you have to give some thought to that, because yes, the commercial end of it has a lot more, controls on it, but the rewards are great. You sell more, you're, working with bigger companies, you produce more of your work, so it's just a different way of working, but I like both of them. So is this, are there a bunch of design students here in the middle? No? Art students? Who are you?
It's a class from an honors college.
Okay, very good.
I was just wondering, I've noticed, of course, you're using environmentally friendly things with the mushrooms and also things that people can relate to, like the bananas and the pig, and it's all very relatable. I was just wondering, does using environmentally friendly material, is that something that you naturally think of using, or is that something that just sort of, it's like a limitation that you have? How do you go about knowing what materials to use or not to use, and do you feel like restricted in any way, or does that make sense?
I'm not, there are a lot of people where that's in their mission, like I'm only going to do environmental work. I haven't been that person, but I love it when I get the opportunity, because you feel like you're doing something good for the world, and I've had the opportunity on a number of occasions. But like I'm not going to not. You always want to. Like making things, industrial design is actually not that great for the world. Like you're using a lot of energy. A lot of things get thrown away. A lot of things are disposable. Like I don't always love what I do, and that was my conflict about the resin, but I'm conscientious. I think about it, but I don't always have the opportunity to act on it. But when Aveda came to me and they said, let's do a lipstick case that's like better for the environment, I was all on board. Like I really believe that we have an environmental crisis in the world, and I really want to do something about it if I can do something to help. But I need to have a career, and not everyone that's coming to me has a great environmental charge. I always try to push them. I've done a lot of fragrance work, like I did that Bang bottle, and I have every presentation I've gone in, I go, can't we do a refillable bottle? Like I'd love to do something like you can make it more expensive, you can make it higher end, and then people can bring it back to you and you can refill it. And I have never had anyone ever go, so I'm always trying, I feel like I'm on the right side of it, but you can't always, you don't always have, it's collaborative, there's a lot of people involved, and you don't always have the right partners. So just keep trying, just keep trying to make it better and make the right decisions.
How come if you're environmentally friendly, you were doing the piggy bank thing? Like, it feels kind of controversial, they're against each other.
Yeah, but that's what I said, it's not part of my mission. But the great thing about the piggy bank is you'll keep it for a long time. It's not a disposable good. So I actually don't really feel badly about that product line at all, because I feel like it's the kind of thing that you buy and it has longevity. It's not a disposable good. But you could say that about almost everything that you put in your house. So is that an answer? I'm just like I don't think the piggy bank's a bad thing, but you could argue it. Are you? What would you think is the killing of the pig or the actual production of the piggy bank? Which is the bad part? Both. Yeah. Well, it was so funny because right after I did it, I had this friend. She was a ceramicist, and she's really like a animal rights activist, and she was sending me all these pictures of like lynched pigs and like all this stuff. And at that point, I still didn't know the real story, that the mother had suffocated it. So I was, I was like, and then I was on the phone with the taxidermist. I was like, this woman, she keeps sending me these pictures of like, dead pigs and like lynched pigs, and it was horrible, and pigs in cages, and he's like, oh, you didn't kill that pig, its mother killed it. I was like, oh, then he told me the whole story about it. So, but I'm a meat eater. I'm was one little piggy, and it was dead already. So. One more.
Okay. Is there a lot of color in your house?
Is there a lot of color in my house? That's a good question. There's not really, actually. It's funny, we have one, I have some colorful things in my house. It's funny, we have one room where we put all of the color, and it's a really dark room. It's a dark brown room, and like if we ever get any like really colorful glass or colorful pillows or blankets, we always put them in that room, and then it all gets absorbed by the brown. So it's not really. There's a lot of different materials in. I usually show my house, but there's like a lot of different materials. Like I love different woods and plywoods and materials, but not so much color. A little bit of color, not tons. Yeah, thank you very much.